Tonight we're going to focus on, Stephen's going to give the talk on Hinduism. I'm going to talk about Islam. And so I think without further ado, I'm going to just turn it over to you.
Okay, good, thanks. And getting back to Hinduism is something that really got me started on a very interesting path in my 20s. And I was going to college and very curious about, the big world and what's happening and why are we here and all the big questions that a philosophy major would ask. And then I took comparative religions and East-West studies, Asian religions, and came across, of course, Hinduism. Probably one could say, the oldest religion in the world. And some of the key perspectives, I didn't know it at the time, turned into really a major part of my life via Edgar Cayce. So things kind of moved around in a great cosmic flow, which to the Hindus would say, yes, it could work out that way. Because Hinduism itself is so broad, and not only talking about it as being broad in concepts and a variety of perspectives, but also broad as in time and space. And working with time and space and like looking back into, how they would conceive of time. And let me give you a quick perspective on how they would look at the big picture here, which is going to get us closer to the Godhead, as they would call it, Brahma. And every 1,000 years, a bird with a silk scarf in its talons would fly across the Himalayan mountains, and that rubbing across the mountains with that scarf would tell us about the time it would take for things to evolve, to change, to transform. Once every 1,000 years, the bird with the silk scarf, and then this whole concept of time and change and kind of an eternity. I mean, if you could think of time in that essence, it's like, wow, that is just immense. Way before, modern scientists, archaeologists, cosmologists that have figured out that we've been here for 4.6 billion years. I think that's the amount. But that would be close to what the Hindus would be describing. So back to my college days, coming across Hinduism in its entirety, the two concepts specific to that would be the reincarnation, and with, again, this broad sense that we are all on this life path together, and there is God. We do have the big picture, and because of time, because of reincarnation, because we go from life to life to life, we've got lots of time. And even though we want to evolve, we want to connect to the Godhead, we want to dissolve into the grand essence of Brahma, we've got time. And you can have a particular style of life, a particular pursuit, including the pursuit of pleasure. Remember, this is the philosophy, this is the religion that also has the Kama Sutra. Let's get specific about what kind of pleasure. Also showing, the broad-mindedness, but at the same time, there would be many Hindus who would say, yeah, there is that, and I can be an ascetic. I can be celibate. And to the Hindus, that's all fine. Whatever path you take is just fine. And maybe you're choosing that because in a past life you went the opposite direction. So that was one area that I thought, wow, what is this thing called reincarnation? And again, I didn't know it at the time, but I was moving towards being a hypnotist, a transpersonal hypnotherapist who conducts past life regressions for people and helping individuals to personally discover for themselves, what were you in a past life? Which again, the Hindus would say, of course, of course. And things will change and grow, and we would all learn. The other thing that is very much a part of the Hindu cosmology and philosophy would be astrology. And the Jyotish, or the Hindu perspective on astrology, is more similar to our medieval Western astrological thing with the square chart. And one of I studied it for a couple of years back in the day, but then finally I said, you know, this is a whole complete system. It's a bit like, imagine a language called French, okay? And then we have English, and you can be talking and say everything that I've just said, but in French. So you're saying the same thing, but now with different words and vocabulary and sounds. And so my conclusion with studying Jyotish or Hindu astrology was sort of similar. It's like, okay, well, we can talk about the different planets and signs and so forth, but the Western, tropical system of astrology is what I decided that it's more my thing. It fits in more to my sensibilities than the Jyotish, but it's just another form of cosmology that, again, from my college days, I said, wow, right here in some of these college classes, these two things in a very ancient religion, Hinduism, has got reincarnation and astrology. And many years later, here I am, hypnotherapist doing past life regressions, and then also an astrologer doing my horoscopes and calculations and prognostications. So it was like I might have been born in that land at one point. And indeed I was. Now I have this light that is lit, a candle, a flame, and one of the things that Hinduism is really telling us is we've got the big picture, we have many different lives, we've got lots of time to do it, so they're really quite open about what is your path, what is your path. You know, you can really get into money, you can really get into sex, you can really get into asceticism, you can be, a yogi out in the woods meditating. It's all fine. You'll find your path. And for those who are evolving, starting off with the student phase in life, and then you go into the married phase in life, and this, by the way, is something that one can do in one life, and they would ask or encourage people that within one life, a really good life, a well-lived life, you can do these 4 different stages. But in the big expansiveness, through many incarnations, you'll do the same thing. Starting off as a student, learning, taking things in, understanding, growing, and then you'll go into the married state where you have a family and then responsibilities, having a job, having to care for others, and that is part of the karma yoga, which is action yoga, which is doing, which is caring. And then from that phase, then you go to a phase of renunciation, where you have finished your responsibilities, perhaps your kids are grown, and you go on into then personal development. And that is yet another phase that we all will take. That's the point. And people right here, right now, are on these different levels, right here, right now. But we all will take these tasks, these phases, these parts of life. So the renunciate, has done that and says, okay, now I will leave my family and now devote time into personal development. My connection with Brahma, my connection with God, with the greater essence. And of course, when you just take a look at the reading material, the religious texts handed down through Hinduism, from the ancient Vedas, going back 3,000 years before Jesus, then to the Upanishads. I looked at that when I was in the graduate school, and I said, I will never read all of these tomes. It's just so much. And then they have the popular ones, the Bhagavad Gita, which I did read, and various gurus throughout the centuries. Again, always think big, always think broad with Hinduism. Throughout the eons of time, where these gurus, or in the ancient times they were called rishis, and the rishis would contemplate the divine and come up with their own perspective on things, and that would be just fine with the Hindus. Here's another view, because the view is vast, okay, big, and there's, like, we can even take a look at our population issue right now. 8 billion people right here in the earth right now. But from a Hindu perspective, there's 8 billion views of God. There's not just one, And there might be groups of them that are rather similar, and so they got a general idea of the same kind of God, which could be Vishnu, which could be Krishna, and you can go on and on with all kinds of gods, from the direct Brahma, which is kind of like all, to the creator aspect of God, to the preserver aspect of God, to the destroyer aspect of God. And that sense of birth, growth, preservation, death, release, letting go, is again paralleling what we will do as individuals, from the student phase to the family phase to the renunciant phase to then the final phase of letting go, which is when they renounce truly everything and they go off into the woods and become a monk. Just letting go. And with some perspectives of Hinduism, we will all take this path. Okay, and it may take people a long time, and they're very patient about that, which is one of the interesting things about the dichotomies. When you're so broad, there's going to be some contradictions, right? And you have these gurus, rishis, from 2000 BC, and then from 100 AD, and then 1000 AD, adding to the wisdom of Hinduism. There's going to be some contradictions. There's going to be some people who won't quite agree with things, even to the point where some of these respected gurus are kind of atheistic. It's like, let us not read the Vedas. Let us not read the ancient scriptures. Forget that. And they are esteemed. That is another way. That is another path. It's like, oh my goodness, so where does it end? And what I would, as a Westerner, I look at this and I read this and I go, this does not match with this. This is contradictory. You can't have that. But to a true Hindu perspective, it is just a myriad of things. And we have the springtime and we have the fall. We have the summer and we have the winter. Things change. Perspectives change. It's all fine. Well, I'm scratching my head. It's like, this is not so fine to me. Now here, back to the candle, is one of the things that I found interesting about the perspective of the ultimate goal, which is to let go, to truly let go of the Atman, which is the individual focus of spirit, to the Brahman, which is the great grand divine, so that they will become one. And their concept is, to let go to the point to extinguish your sense of self into pure spirit. And they have a similar, this is not just a metaphor. I think this is truly a belief. Similar to the light, the flame, and that would be the Atman, that would be the light, the spirit within each and every one of us. And there is this fire outside on the other side of that flame. So we can't see it, okay? But it animates everything. There's a divine fire, and then it's focalized into a flame in a candle, for instance. And so it's in our dimension. But when it's extinguished, this is nirvana. This is the ultimate letting go. And there's two ways of looking at that. Either through the actual death of the body, and that's extinguishing, and then you go back to the great. Or it is having reached within your own lifetime that sense of, I am going to elevate my consciousness, really letting go of Stephen, really just like the duality, which is I am separate from spirit, from God, from Brahma, and now we become one, or nothing. And that's intermingled, the oneness, the pure oneness, or the nothingness. That is the extinguishing of the flame. So let us feel and witness this flame going out, which is the nirvana, which is the focus point of letting go, but it's the shift into expansion into all. Okay? So as a kind of a quick meditation, a quick kind of focusing here upon this light, recognizing, that you as the Atman, your own light, as you focus upon this light, it is you and you are it. And you, within you, you have got a flame, your own light, your own essence, shimmering and alive and light. And as you breathe, feel and witness that shimmering light within you. And then I'm going to blow out the candle, and I want you to simultaneously feel, sense that light not disappearing, but expanding within your heart, within your consciousness, and in this space and time. Breathing. The light will change, will go out right. And now, is there or can anyone or does anyone here wish to express perhaps that sense of expansion or moving away from the now? Anyone wish to share anything about that? Did you feel it? Elizabeth?
Well, we're the fellowship of the inner light. So this is all about the inner light.
It is, isn't it?
Which we have up here, by the way, in the candle.
That's right.
The,
Yeah.
The idea being God's presence within us, and God expresses, God is light. So.
Yeah, and the interfaith perspective of that, too. There's part of this that's informational. Part of this sharing is personal. And part of it is astrological, because I hope that we can go outside and take a look at Venus and Jupiter, which are now in the west, because Venus, Aphrodite, the goddess, the feminine, the essence of sensuality, and in this broad religious perspective, again comes the Kama Sutra. And there are temples, maybe some of you have seen pictures or maybe gone to these in India, temples to the dancing goddesses. Very voluptuous, very enticing. And so the Hindu perspective says, yes, if you want to get into that, let's do it right. Let's study it and move towards tantric sexuality, which in its essence is the weaving of life, like cloth, the web of life in cloth, as things intertwine with each other. And so to devote yourself to learning in your student phase, in your adult family phase, sex, sexuality, pleasure. In your renunciate phase, it is also service to others. And then the final phase is to renounce, to let go, to feel the candle blow out, to totally let go and release. That then might lead you into the in-between world. And then you may choose at that point another assignment, and you'll come back into the earth, be incarnated again. And we have the transmigration of the souls. From that perspective, a bit different from my belief, a bit different from a Edgar Cayce belief, a soul can then also inhabit that of an animal, which is why we have sacred cows and other, honoring of other animals, because it might be a human, a relative, a person that is either through their karma, and here's another Hindu perspective, karma, that which you do shall come back to you, that which you sow, you shall reap. It's like in the weave of the philosophy of Hinduism. And that can happen in one lifetime, or present lifetime, but it can also happen in many lifetimes. Okay? It comes back, and so your next life will have a consequence from your present actions and deeds. And to try to overcome that, or to minimize that, or to rise above that, then we have the yogas. The various types of yogas are actions, and it means a discipline, and our English word yoke is connected to yoga. What is the yoke that an animal puts on the harness that one one wears in your particular discipline of self-improvement. And one of the more difficult yogas, and therefore fewer people follow that, is jnana yoga, J-N-A-N-A, jnana, which is the yoga of the mind, a yoga of understanding, to perceive, to understand things, to get it intellectually. They say it's the fastest route, but the most difficult, and a lot of people just are not into it.
Is that the one that the ascetics practice, the ones that go off into the mountains by themselves and are by themselves, just kind of contemplating? Or is
That's a different one.
That's
yeah,
different,
yeah.
yeah.
Oftentimes that's more of a renunciate phase, which is actually beyond yoga. It's more of a lifestyle choice. It's more of like letting go and like, I'm finished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because the yoga is what you take into discipline to get you closer to Brahma, to get you closer to the
So
spirit.
the practice that
Yeah,
makes
the others are like saying, I'm out of here.
you more consumption.
Yeah. So bhakti yoga is that of devotion. And they say that the majority of people would be more interested in this because it's of the heart, compassion, caring for others, bhakti. Just, and from that are many different rituals because you're devoting yourself to something. And there's so many rituals in Hinduism. I mean, lighting candles, to pujas, to incense, to chanting, mandalas, mudras, so many ways to devote to a particular path. And through those actions, you are training yourself to get closer to spirit. And then we have karma yoga, and that is action. And one thing about karma we think is like, oftentimes in the West, it's almost like negative karma. Oh, I did something bad, something bad's gonna happen to me. But karma is neutral. It means action. So you can have good karma or bad karma. Good actions, poor actions. Hopefully we learn from the poor. And so karma is what you do. It is action. It is work, service. Although bhakti yoga can also be of service too, because out of pure care, compassion, love, wanting to do good for other people. What we in the West often come across would be hatha yoga, which is yin-yang yoga, or various other forms of physical discipline and different body positions that again goes back thousands of years, because they say, you've got the body is the vehicle, you are the Atman, the individual focus of that. And so you can discipline yourself, and it can be physical, but it can also be devotional, it can also be intellectual. Again, they're so broad, in all the different ways that we can get there. And the physical ones, like hatha yoga, would be more of the certain positions that you train yourself, and there's a correlate between, as you are in certain positions, you can get in tune with states of mind, states of consciousness. But at the same time, you're getting the body into shape, into flexibility, and so that then you can go ahead and do your karma yoga, your action, the things that you need to do in the world. Again, it's so, we can go in many different directions with this. Vajra yoga is more of again, a smaller group of people would be into that, and that would be more of following the rituals and the chants and getting into some sort of rhythm like that. Very similar to the rosary beads. where you can like, kind of get into a state just by that. And there was another yoga. Oh, well, there's quite a few yogas actually, but there was another. Oh, there we go. Raja. Yeah, that was the one. The royal path. And the royal path is where from that one a whole set of philosophies and practices come just from Raja Yoga, and that would be some of the different physical forms of body postures again, but also and the royal way would be this is going to work for everybody. That's why it's the royal way, the royal path, Raja. And with that will come lots of different sitting postures. In fact, even, that is such an old tradition, again, going back thousands of years. Even some of the ancient texts are connected with, as you sit, or as the disciple sits with the guru, it's built into the understanding. You sit and you take in. And so the Raja path is the one that you have these particular disciplines, exercises, yogas, mantras, which are special words typically in Sanskrit. Sanskrit, ancient language in the Indus Valley, in that tradition. 3000 BC is when the Aryans, lighter-skinned people from the Caucasus and from the Russian steppes, as we would call them today, came in as tribes into India, and then the Dravidians, the more dark-skinned people in the southern part of India, and there's still a bit of a separation there today, that from that time really came the Vedas and the Upanishads, and kind of like a modern Hinduism born from this mixture of cultures. And from that also comes, and this is where I think it really got off of track, the rules of Manu, which was kind of like the order of how things should be running in society. And unfortunately, one of those was the caste system. And they talk about, the priestly group of people, and then the warrior class, and then those who can create and establish an economy. So the entrepreneurs class, and then came the workers. In fact, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing this. Hierarchy, with the Brahmins at the top, the priestly class, and then at the bottom with the workers. We're even seeing some of that here in the United States in the last couple of years. The essential workers that keeps everything going. But then came also the untouchables, like a fifth class that came from that. And this was inspired by the rules of Manu, which again goes back probably 3,000 years, where somebody similar to in the Middle East when they had Hammurabi, who an eye for an eye, and kind of a primitive kind of we're going to have order and we're going to have rules and regulations and so forth. Manu, as far as I'm concerned, was a bit like that, so I'm not a big fan of Manu, but this was part of the establishment of order in society. And part of that was recognizing the caste system, that I'd have to say probably that the majority of Hindus today are really against it. Philosophically, it is against the law. I can say that too. So different traditions. But remember that in the big, broad perspective of Hinduism, there are many ways, there are many rishis or gurus who have come throughout the centuries, and they have their particular perspective on things. And so we learn from them, and sometimes it catches on, and then it turns into something solid, or a group, or an ashram, or a devotional type of setting, or an erroneous system of hierarchy in class systems. And the Hindus say, yeah, okay, well, we can follow that or not. And if you don't like it, then you'll be another lifetime. You can get over that. So my perspective, interesting enough, Plato, because I was studying, ancient Greek philosophy at the same time as studying, the Hindu philosophy. Plato said the same thing about there are the golden people, the silver people, and the bronze people. Different people who have natural abilities that some are meant to lead, to inspire, some are meant to administrate and protect, some are meant to work and to create and so forth. But Plato said that from golden parents can come a silver child. And from bronze parents can come a golden child. So he wasn't stuck in the caste system. It was like just recognizing that we all are born with different gifts. I wish Manu would have read some Plato, because it did turn into something really kind of stuck. But that is not only something about Hinduism, but something about all religions. That sometimes, you get this perspective or a slant on things, and it could come from, a devout person within the system, and then it gets rigid, and then it gets into a system, and then it turns into a law, and then we've got problems. And a classic Hindu would say, yes, and you made a mistake, and so you'll have to pay for it later. But there's no blame. It's like you erred. You went down the wrong path. And how many of us will go down wrong paths? And so there's not necessarily a forgiveness, but a sense of karma will meet everything out. And so you will let go of it, and you will learn either in your lifetime or later. So again, very forgiving in that sense.
So does Hinduism place judgment on it? You just mentioned right, wrong, good, bad, or do they more or less believe all paths lead to God? So because earlier you were saying like it didn't matter which path you choose because it's all going to take you to the same place eventually.
Eventually.
So do they have that sort of judgment placed on it?
Not really.
Not so much?
No. If we really pay attention to the rules and the strictures of Manu, then he was really a judgmental person. Okay. But then the Hindu would say that was a judgmental system, and that's not Hinduism.
Okay.
Yeah. So and as far as karma is concerned, there's good and bad karma. But it's not like a judgment. It's like, well, you're gonna pay for that later.
Yeah, just
I don't know. It's not up to me. So in that sense, really quite broad. Yeah. So I've mentioned quite a few different things, but this is such a religion. Maybe many of you have got also different perspectives, studied things about Hinduism. Would like to add to this conversation, or things that you have read, or would like to add to what I've already said. Anyone? Bruce, you know a lot about Hinduism.
Well, I was just thinking, I went to India back in 2018. I did a personal pilgrimage out there myself. I went by myself because I really like the idea of, just kind of me and God, It's not the tour bus out there honking saying, next museum, we got to go. So I was able to really meditate. And but the thing, one of the most striking things about India was the reverence they have for animals. It was the most amazing thing because in the West you'd never see this. But I'd be walking down this little market, path, and I'd feel this energy coming up behind me, and it turned out it was this big bull, not a little, but a big bull, and just walking right behind me, walking by me. Nobody's paying any attention to this bull. No, and the bull's not paying any attention to them. It's just like life. And I'm thinking now, if this was America, somebody would be running to their pickup to get a shotgun to shoot it and butcher it. So I really respect that about the Indians. I think it's the only country in the world that has so much love and respect for animals. there's monkeys all over the place, you know, and they're all free, you know, they just roam around. When I went over there to Varanasi, which is considered the holiest city in India, used to be called Benares. They have like over 1,000 temples. All the temples honor different gods. I went to my little hotel room, which turned out it was right on the Ganges River with this beautiful view. And the guy that took me to my room, he says, "Now be sure you lock your door. Lock your door at night. You know, it's a little sliding door." And I said, "Well, of course, you know. I guess is there a problem with theft?" He said, "Oh no, theft's not the problem." He says, "If you don't lock the door, the monkeys will be coming in here and looking for food and tear up your room before you can get them out." You know, so it's like, you know, I knew I wasn't in Kansas anymore when talking like that. You know, but I really think that's so cool the way they love the animals, and of course that all goes back to their beliefs about animals. Many of the Hindu gods, such as Hanuman, is one of my favorites. He's the monkey god. And all these gods, by the way, that's the big question about Hinduism. Why do they have all these gods? I mean, you know, the first of the 10 Commandments says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before thee," right? In Islam, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, you know, it's very monotheistic, right? What is this all about these gods? It was really interesting when the Muslims attacked India, and they ruled India for, I think, 400 or 500 years. The first things that the first rulers did when they came into India was to try to destroy all the gods, because it was against one of the primary tenets. It was actually pillar number 1, which I'll talk about when I talk about Islam, about there's only one God. But that's what they did, is they went in and tried to destroy all the gods. So why do they have all these gods? Well, the most important thing to understand is that all these gods, what the Hindus do different than all the other religions, is that they recognize that everything in existence is an expression of God. Everything, okay? You know, and what they did different than all the other religions, they personalized it all. You know, so the wood and this floor would have a God. They created that, but it doesn't. It's not a God that you worship. It's a God. It's just an expression of the one God, which is Brahman. Brahman is the one God that is behind. Creator, sustainer of all that is. I like the way Eckhart Tolle puts it. He says, you know, what is God? Well, God is the underlying life force that from which all form, everything that exists, springs. And so you have this one. This is really important. There's only really one God in Hinduism. It's not, but all these other gods are different expressions of God. So the wind, for example, will have a God, and in Christianity we talk about angels, where angels are servants of God. So they're very much. They don't call these angels God, although a lot of folks will really honor Mary to the point that they're kind of like praying to Mary, you know, for example. But that's the idea behind all the gods, and you know. If you want, like Hanuman, for example, is the god that represents strength and energy. And so if you're looking for strength and energy, I will chant a Hanuman mantra, and I can actually feel God's energy filling me, you know. And so if it helps you, the point here, all the religions, it all depends on what works for you. If it helps you to understand God better through personalizing all the powers and forces that God that are all expressions of God. If that helps you, great. If it doesn't, it's not your religion. You know, the Hindus love it. You know, okay.
Mm-hmm. And similar to that is Ganesh, you know, the elephant god. It's the great, you know, it's an animal, very big, you know, and so it means great, good things, you know, the good things of the earth, prosperity. Money, prosperity, and so forth. You know, Ganesha. You know, and so, and so many other things, the manifestation.
And Shiva and Vishnu, y'all might have said this before, I was a little late. So Shiva is the destroyer, right?
That's right.
But a lot of people think about it as a negative connotation, like you're destroying something, but it's actually to kind of like remove that which is holding you back.
Mhm.
Am I understanding that
That's right,
correctly?
that's right.
So that you can,
Mhm.
progress or whatever.
Right, right. And the Dravidians in the south of India are more, Shiva devotees, as compared with Vishnu in the north.
Yeah.
And so even after 3,000 years, they still have these divisions about, well, which aspect of Brahman, of the one, are you really, focusing upon?
Now, what's Vishnu?
Vishnu is the
Is
preserver.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brahma is the creator,
Yeah,
and then Shiva is the destroyer. So we like the creator and the preserver. Shiva, do I really want Shiva in my life? You look at life, you see everything is birth, life, death. We have cells every day, for example, every 24 hours. I'm told by scientists that, I don't know this myself, but that every cell in our intestinal tract, right, is replaced every 24 hours. It's born, has a life, and it dies, and is reborn, and new cells then have grown, right? So if it wasn't for death, we wouldn't live very long, you see? So this is happening in our own bodies. And the same thing every day. We have the sunrise come up, that's Brahma. Then we have the day. We're doing all this stuff, that's Vishnu. Shiva's the sun going down. So if you understand Shiva like that, Shiva all of a sudden takes on some significance,
It's even like earth cycles, trees and things die.
Exactly.
And
Autumn.
everything, the
Soil,
seasons,
Mhm.
yeah,
Is
Yeah.
the creator of life.
exactly.
Yeah, as well as that light going out, that flame. There was the death of that, but it wasn't the death. It just transformed it to another dimension, letting go, expanded. Yeah, so really interesting. So out here in the sky, we have got Venus and Jupiter. We probably have to go and take a look before they disappear. But again, Venus, of the goddess, of the feminine, of music, of devotion, of aesthetics. And then next to Jupiter, expansion and good luck, and perhaps similar to Ganesh. And the word guru is Jupiter in astrology. But of course, with the Hindu perspective, guru means many other different things. But astrologically, Jupiter is guru. Years ago, Swami Byandananda, if some of you know about him, he came over here to the fellowship, and a very funny fellow.
Is that Sally Perry's?
No. This is Steve Behrman is his actual name over in California, but he does a comedy thing, Swami Byandananda.
Okay.
Byandananda. He's a very funny fellow. Yeah, very funny. Yeah, and so he said, okay, we're ready for now the guru chant. Are you all ready for this? G-U-R-U. G-U-R-U. G, you are you. And that is the guru chant that we are spirit, we are the one. So a quick break, if we can, to go and take a look and how the Hindus would do it, and maybe the Jyotish astrologers, they would see them relatively close together. They're in the tropical system of Aries, but they're in the Hindu system in Pisces. There's 24 degrees between the two zodiacs. But those two dancing so close together would be an ominous time, another opportunity for a ritual, for a devotional type of penance, or doing something that would be indicative of how they could come together, which is an expansion of money, good things in your life, pleasantries, song and dance, and things like that. So contemplate as you go out there and feel in your heart that, yes, you can accept these good things in your life, and maybe the politicians might, get a little bit more expanded and philosophical and generous in their own lives.